Greetings, this is Jim Lindsay. This is a CIS video. In it, I will be walking you through the Rembrandt tutorial for Scribus. Basically, this is an orientation session for the Scribus application, as well as an introduction on how to make a flyer, specifically one that's given to us directly from the help manual for Scribus, which is awesome. And so that's what we'll be working on. And to facilitate this, I have some things that I've placed on Blackboard for you. First of all, you're watching the video, so thank you for doing that. There's a help file, this PDF document. Please download that. That comes, again, directly from the help section of the Scribus software. When you open that up, it looks like this. It's about 20 pages long, and that is a picture of what we're going to be working towards. I'm not going to show you every single step of every single part of this, because I can show you parts of the images, parts of the text, parts of the lines. And if I do that once or twice, then you get the idea. And so just in the interest of time, I'm not going to show you every single step. Now, on top of that, you can also move through this step-by-step guide and see how to do it. And so in addition to this help file, which obviously is going to be very beneficial, you also have some images. You have a picture of Rembrandt himself, who was an artist, and we want to basically create this flyer, which would be showing pictures from that he had painted back in the 1600s, and so we would like to have a picture, the self-portrait of the artist himself, and so that's what that image file is for. So you'll want to download that. You'll also want to download this Scribus logo, this ping file right here. That's what will display right down here. There are also two font files, this bitstream and gentium.zip files. And you want to download those to your machine. If you're at a Western lab computer, you will not be able to install those. You do not have the administrative privileges to install a font, but if you're using your own computer, and since this is a summer class, and because most of you are using your own PCs, you can do this. And so that's one of the benefits of doing this in the summer versus the regular semester. So download those zip files if you would like to get the fonts that will allow you to make exactly what you see on this screen in front of you. So those are the files that you'll want for this project, as well as there's a website called dafont.com. Looks like this. I'm going to show you the installation of a font from this website in just a moment. There's also a link to a YouTube video on how to install a font. If what I show you doesn't help you install a font, then perhaps this one will. It's a short video. It's very well made, and the creator of it basically walks you through the process of getting and installing a font on a computer. So let's start with that, because the first step in this tutorial basically is to get the Gentium and Bitstream fonts onto your computer, and you want those on the computer before you start, because once you start the creation of the file, you don't want to have to stop and then go out and install fonts and blah blah blah. So let's get those there first. And so I'm going to minimize the help file. I'll minimize my browser, and I have the Gentium and the Bitstream zip files on my computer already, but I already have those fonts, and so me trying to install those again is going to be sort of fruitless. And so let me get a font that I don't have, and I'll do that from dafont.com. And so I'm going to go to that website, and this is a place where you can download fonts, and they have different categories of fonts. I learned of this website from a student, from a computer science student, a couple of semesters ago, and it's I've enjoyed it. So we've got this here's one, this DK Drop Dead Gorgeous font. If you find a font that you would like to get, you click on the download button, and it downloads the zip file for you, and you can see the preview of it right there. And once it downloads it, let me go to where it downloaded it on my computer. That's the download folder. So go to the download folder. There's the dkdropdeadgorgeous.zip file. That's a compressed folder. And what that means, it's taken a bunch of different things and squished those together into a single item. When you watch the tutorial file, the tutorial video for this particular homework assignment, I show you how to create these zip files. So it's just a very easy means of getting a whole bunch of things to somebody in a very small way. And so that's what's inside of the zip file. There's multiple things in here. So if we open it up, if you double click it, it will give you the OTF file, which is the actual font itself. There's a ping file in here. There's some there's a README file here as well, in a PDF format, so you can open this up and read about the font itself. And you can talk about the purchasing and the licensing and so on. And what you'll find is you look at these README files from what you get from dafont.com. As this one says right here, basically, if you're going to use this for personal use, you can just use it for free. But if you're going to commercially use it, then you would want to go ahead and make a purchase of it from the individual that's put it up there on dafont.com. So that gives us our information. You can scroll through and read the rest of it. Let me actually just close out one font, because there's our help file right there. So now what I'd like to do is I'm going to select this OTF file right here. I'm going to double click it, and it gives me a preview of what this font looks like. And the creators of fonts, I mean, you've got to give them a lot of credit. This is, think about how long it would take to come up with a graphic on, basically draw a brand new version of every single letter, lowercase, uppercase, in regular versions, italics versions, bold versions. I mean, every single one of those is a different picture. And so it takes a long time to create a font. And that's why people charge for fonts. Like he says, if you're going to do this commercially, you have to pay me. So you have to give these guys credit for coming up with this. It gives you a preview, and if you like what you see and you want it, what you do is you click on the install button right up here, and then it goes through the installation process. And so on my computer, it kind of sits here, and the button kind of goes gray, but at this point I think it's done. And I'm using Windows 10, the education version. You can see that from the corner down here. As I close this up again, this is called DK Drop Dead Gorgeous. If I want to see if that's actually installed, I'll start Microsoft Word, and I'll just type a sentence. This is a sentence, and I'll select that text, and I'm going to go to my different font choices, and as I scroll down to the D's, we'll see if there's a DK. There it is, DK Drop Dead Gorgeous. And so that's that font installed on my computer, and now it's there. And so that's the process for getting a font. And if you would like the Gentium and the Bitstream fonts, which are part of this tutorial, then that's how you would install them. You would open up those zip files, and then open up the TTF files. In this case, they're TTF files inside the fonts themselves, and install those fonts so that you could make a picture exactly like the one that you see right here. So that's the process of getting a font. Now the next thing that this tutorial wants us to do is it wants us to then get the color palette for Scribus. And so to get the color palette for Scribus set up, I showed you how to do that at the end of the portable apps tutorial. But in the event you didn't do it, let me show you how to do that very quickly again. So I'm going to get that to work, I have to open up my portable apps installation. That's coming from my thumb drive. So if I look at my computer and I come down to my thumb drive, there's my thumb drive. In my CIS 320 portable apps folder, if you watched my tutorial about portable apps, you'll say, oh, that's where he created that USB thumb drive. There's the start.exe file. I'm going to open that up, and there's my portable apps installation, the platform, and I install Scribus. So I'm going to select Scribus. It takes a single click. Get rid of this guy. And again, it's creating the font cache, which I explained in the tutorial for portable apps. It's going to give me the prompt about GhostScript, and I'll say, okay, I know it's not there. And I'll hit cancel on this new document screen. And so at this point, I need to set my palette, because what it's asking, or what it's telling you to do in this tutorial here is, hey, by default, you're going to get like this very limited color set for your desktop publishing documents, and that's probably not going to be robust enough for your liking. So instead, why don't you get something really expansive like this X11 set? And so to make that happen, all you have to do is go up to the edit, come down to the colors, and where it says current color sets, you go from Scribus Small or Scribus Basic down to the X11 choice, which is right there. And so I've already done it, so it's already there. If you haven't done it, then make sure that your color set is X11. Hit OK, because once you start into a document, if you've started it with the small color set, you can't change it. You have to start over and then change the color. You have to close everything out, start Scribus from scratch, like to this state, then change the color set, and then start over. So it's a non-forgiving process. So make sure you get that color set in place before you begin, so you can get these colors that are presented to you in this tutorial. Okay, so let's get this thing going here and start the creation of our Rembrandt flyer. Before I do that, up here, notice that you have a toolbar up here, and on the extreme right you'll see things that look kind of like footsteps, and then like a page, a couple of forms there, a checkbox. This is each one of these. As you get to the end of each one of these, you'll see like a dot 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 kind of a look. These are different toolbars which you can manipulate on your page. And if you this one on the far right here, this is the PDF form toolbar. We're going to use this extensively at the end of this summer. And so what I would recommend to you is to take that toolbar, just move your pointer to where it turns to 4 points of a compass, hold your left mouse button, pull down, and you can make that thing float. But what I want to do is put it over here on the left side, because at the point when we start to need that, if we have it over here on the left side by itself, it's much easier to use. And so I'm just going to take this dude, move him over here to the left, and now it's docked over here. And it's just like if you were driving a boat and you were piloting a boat, you could dock it at the dock. You could tie it up so that it doesn't float away. You can dock that toolbar over there, and it stays out of your way, and it's very convenient to access those PDF tools. So just for future reference, take that toolbar from the right, place it over here is my recommendation to you. And that's how I like to work with this. Now, how do we get a document started? Well, when we first started the software, we were prompted with like, hey, do you want to start a new document, or do you want to open something? To get that to pop back up again, all we have to do is go to the File and New. And this is that same interface that you saw a moment ago. Now, this software was created in an open source environment. And what that means is basically the people that created this were doing it for free, and it was done in Europe. And as you can tell a lot about that, because as you look at the different paper sizes, for example, these are paper sizes that you would see if you lived in Europe. Instead of like legal or letter size, you're seeing like the A4 and the B's and the C's, these different paper styles. If you lived in France or Germany or something, you'd be like, oh, I know what that is. And so we're used to working with the legal and letter size, though. So if you hit L to kind of get this to come down, if you want to go to a letter size piece of paper, that's what I recommend, because then what you're going to see on the screen will correspond well to paper that you would have in your printer. You're not going to have any disparities between what you create and what you can actually produce on a printer. Now, You can also change the orientation of the page through this drop down box right here. As far as the width and the height, this is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, but currently it's measuring it in points, and you'll see like the PT right there. And so to get that to 2 inches, use this drop down box down here, and then that starts to make a lot more sense there in inches. Margin guides, these things over here basically at about ½ an inch. You're going to have a margin guide, and that tells you, it gives you a warning basically if you put things outside of those margin guides, they're probably not going to print. Most of your printing devices are not capable of actually printing any closer to the edge than that, and so that's the purpose of that. So with this in mind, we've got a single page document we're going to create with a portrait orientation, 8.5 by 11. It's a single page, one page. You could use the arrows there to make that more pages if you wanted it, but this is ideal for what we want, so I'm going to hit OK. And then there is my page on which I can work, and scroll up and down, and this probably feels very basic, very rudimentary compared to what you're used to. I get that, but you know, again, it's free. We didn't pay anything for this one, whereas if you went out and you bought Microsoft Office for a brand new computer, you'd pay $350 for like the Office Pro, right? So a lot cheaper on this one. Let's zoom out so we can see more of the page, and you have like zooming buttons where you can zoom in, you can zoom out, and at least for the beginning, let's get it to where we can see the page, and then we'll start to zoom in as necessary. But now we have our document created, we have where we can see the page, and let's do a save. Let's save this thing. And so I'm going to go to File and Save As, and I'm going to put this and keep this on my thumb drive. And so as I look at the Save As dialog box here, make that it's a little bit bigger. I can look at the computer, I can look at the identity. I'm going to go with the Jim Lindsay, that's how I'm logged in. It's easier to me to find what I'm looking for through you've got the my computer choice or the identity choice. Because I'm going to my thumb drive, I'm going to go with my computer. I'm going to double click the D, and I want to create a new folder. You'll see as you look at the little choices here, there's what looks like a folder. I'm going to click Create New Folder, and I'm going to call this Rembrandt Project. And this is about Rembrandt van Rijn. So this Rembrandt Project is where I'm going to put this, and I'm going to call this Flyer. That's fine. So I'm going to call it Flyer. Actually, I'll call it like Jim Lindsay Flyer. So Jim Lindsay Flyer in the Rembrandt Project folder on my thumb drive. I'm going to hit OK, and now it's saved. You can see that that's where it's located right there. And I failed to create that folder, that Rembrandt Project folder at the beginning. I apologize on that. And in fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and close. No, I won't close. I'll just minimize Scribus here. But let me go to on my computer. Let me go to the D drive here and look at that. You'll see that Rembrandt Project folder there. What I want to do, I'm going to open that up in Windows Explorer. What I want you to do is I want you to take these image files that you downloaded, the Rembrandt picture as well as the Scribus logo, and you need to put those in that folder. This is very crucial to your success. Anytime you're working with Scribus stuff, the Scribus file you'll see is called an SLA file. It's a really weird file extension, and if you don't have Scribus installed on the computer, your machine will kind of freak out and go, what is this? I don't know what it is. I don't know how to open it. But that's the file that we're creating and working with. And so anytime you're working with these, you want to put all the images right in the folder with it. So I'm going to take these two guys right here, the Rembrandt and logo images, and just move those into that folder. So there they are. And because it was a thumb drive, I wanted to copy those over, but I'm going to delete those from my desktop so I don't get confused, because there we go. So the everything I need is now in this folder with the SLA file, with the Scribus file, and now I can start to create this document that explained to us, in this help file. So we're in good shape. We have our fonts, we have our pictures in the right place, we have our folder in place, and all we have to do now is go through the creation process to make it. So let's take a quick look at what it wants us to make. Here's that little snapshot of the completed flyer. Let me point some things out to you here. If you would, make sure that you have this help file open on your computer, and your if it's not clear from what you're seeing in the video. But what you're looking at here is a page, and the page has a big gray rectangle on it. That's what this background is, a gray rectangle. And on top of the gray rectangle, you have two pictures. You have one picture in its natural state right here, and you have another version of the picture right back here behind it, and it's basically been made to grayscale, which means black and white. And some other effects have been applied to it. It's been made kind of blurry. It's been made where it's been inverted, where basically, like, if you were to look at a negative, I don't even know if you guys have ever even seen negatives, like back when we had film-based cameras, but when you hold the negative up to the light, what's supposed to be dark is light, and what's supposed to be light is dark. And so those sorts of effects have been applied to this version of the picture, and one's laid right on top of the other. Then we have the logo for the Scribus software right down here in the lower left corner. And then we have several text boxes. We have the Rembrandt text box in white. We have the Van Ringen, which is behind it, subdued and layered behind it. Then we have the Painting of the Dutch Golden Age in a yellow right there. We have a solid line placed right there, and then the number 1606 and 2006. Those guys placed on a page. Those are text boxes. And then Scribus Publishing right here. So that's what we're making, a gray rectangle, placing two pictures to get the Rembrandt stuff here, as well as this third picture for the logo, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 text boxes, as well as a horizontal line. So it shouldn't take too much time. What I'm going to show you is how to do like Rembrandt and Van Ringen. Once you've seen those two different bits of text and the layering of those and the coloring of those, you can do the rest of it on your own. I'll also show you the insertion process for the pictures for this foreground one and this background one. And once you've seen those two, then you can easily put the Scribus logo one back here. So with that done, with that knowledge, you'll be able to create this entire document, and you have the step-by-step instructions in the document right there in front of you. So that's what we'll be working on. Okay, so if you want to look at the help file itself, starting on like page 2, it starts talking about creating this background. Let me show you how you do that. We're going to go to Scribus. It's right there, and as you look at this toolbar across the top, one of these choices is to insert shapes, and there's a drop-down box with it. And if you select that, you'll see there are different default shapes and arrows and flowcharts and jigsaws. We want a default shape. Specifically, we want a square or a rectangle, and then we're just going to draw that dude on the page. And I know I didn't draw the size of the entire page because I'm going to use a different interface to actually get that exactly the way I want it. But I've drawn a rectangle on my page, and you can see it right there. Now, there is a keystroke here that you want to just commit to memory, and it is F2. Again, it's F2. If you look at the function keys across the top of your computer board, there's F1 all the way through F12. F2 brings up this property box. So I'll close that again. I'm going to hit F2, and what that does, it brings up this property box. And with this property box, you can pretty much do everything. And without it, you can't really do hardly anything. All right. And so you're going to get used to working with this property box, which can be, kind of. It can be a little frustrating because you're used to like working with the shape itself and the whole what you see, what you get interface. This is like taking a step back. This is going back to like, back before computers were so easy to use. And it's just the way it is. And so So for example, with nothing selected, this properties box is kind of grayed out. But if I select that square again, things start to light up. And I can do things like I can give it a name. I can give it, for example, I can call it background. So I've got a name for this shape. I can give us a location for it. And because if you look at this ruler up here at the top, there's a ruler at the top, a ruler on the side. The 0 and 0 point of this ruler is the upper left corner. And so what I'm going to do with this, the geometry here for the X and the Y position, I'm going to make those 0 and 0. And when I do that, it moves up to the very top. And it's exactly located at this 0, 0. Perfect. Now what I can also do with the width and the height, I know this is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, so I can make this thing exactly 8.5 in width and exactly 11 in height, and now it's exactly the exact same size as the page. I know it's exactly in the corner, and so now it's exactly where I want it. Now all I have to do now is put a color on it. And so as you look at these different choices, say, well, which one of these would let me start to color that box? Well, there's a choice down here on the bottom called colors. If you look at that, if you click on it, it expands out. And you'll see that you can affect a line color or a fill color. This is very Adobe-like. Again, there's a line color and a fill color. If you've never worked with InDesign or Photoshop or things like that, that may seem kind of strange to you that you could have a line color or a fill color. But that's the way this thing was more or less designed. And so you select the fill color. That's what we are interested in. And as you scroll down this list, you'll start to notice these colors are the same ones that you saw in an X11 color palette. And so what we're looking for is basically as you come down to the G's, there's one gray 41 is the one that we're specifically looking for. If you want to be consistent with what's in the tutorial. And so I'm going to come down here to gray 41 and apply that color, and bam, there you go. So now that rectangle is a gray 41. It's the same exact size as the piece of paper itself, and it's located at the 0, 0 point right up there at the top. So that's how you get your background in place. I'll have you do that like with your flyer assignment. You have to do that. You have to create a colored background, and that's how you achieve that. So that's our first step. And there are many pages and many snapshots, screenshots in this tutorial item that teach you how to do that, but that's how you get your background in place. Okay, before we move on and start to put our pictures in here, let's do one last thing to this background so let's lock it so we don't mess it up. So I'm going to select that rectangle, and on the basically the XYZ area of the properties box, you'll see that there's a little icon, a padlock, and if you hover over the top of it, you can lock or unlock that object. So if I lock that, what that effectively does is it makes that a background that I can't then accidentally mess up. Now if I want to get back to that at some point in the future, what I could do, I could click on there and then unlock it, and then I could change its color or move it. But because that's going to be a solid, consistent, static background for me, I'm going to go ahead and lock that, and then it's out of the way. Now I can place stuff on top of it, and it'll be much easier for me to do the rest of my work. So now what I need to do is start getting my pictures in place, my pictures of Rembrandt. Okay, so to get our pictures, if you want to refer to the instruction set, we're at about page 8, step 2, inserting the cover picture. And let's go to our Scribus page here, and from the insert portion of the menu up here, you'll see there are various types of frames, and we're going to be working with picture frames, image frames, and we're going to be working with text frames. So the text frames will be where you want to insert blocks of typed text. In this case, because we want the Rembrandt pictures, we need to insert an image frame. So I'm going to select image frame, and then I have to draw it. And so I'm draw on my page a rectangle here about what I think is about right. And then because I have this XYZ section of the properties here, what I'm going to do is use it to adjust the exact position and size of this particular document, or this image frame, okay? And so note that there's also something called the base point. I know this is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, right? So if I want this picture to be exactly at the right bottom corner, then the bottom right corner should be at 8.5 by 11. That makes sense. And so to adjust that, I have these different base points I can select, and what I'm doing is I'm selecting either the upper left, lower right, upper right, or the center of that shape. And because I want the bottom right corner of this to be at that specific point, I'm going to select that point right there and say the position should be 8.5 and at 11. And in doing that, it exactly places it where it should be. Now, it may look like it's you know, that there's something is over to the edge, but that's a shadow. If you zoom in here closer to the bottom of that page, you'll see that there is a shadow of the page, but our image frame itself is actually right at that corner of the page like we want it to be. So that's the that's how I'm going to get that image frame where I want it to be. As far as the size of it, if I want to make that a little bit, I might make that a little bit taller. Maybe make that like 8 inches and make the width maybe 6 inches, like that. And so that looks pretty good to me. So there's my image frame, one of my image frames. Now what I would like to do is get a second image frame just about 1/2 inch over to the left of this one. And so to that, I'm going to go back to my instruction set. And as you scroll down here, you'll start to see that you can make a copy of it. And if you select something and go to the item menu, you can start to duplicate items. And this is, so I encourage you to open, this is on page 9 of the instruction set. Look at this and look at these screenshots, and this will help you get this this duplicate copy where we're going to put the version of the picture with, you know, where it's grayscaled and inverted and glossed over and all that kind of stuff. To get it onto the screen easily, you can follow these steps described in chapter, you know, on page 9 here of this help file. Okay, so I'll do that. So I'm going to go over to Scribus. My image frame is selected. If you know, I know it's selected because it has the red border around it. And up here on the menu, I can go to Item and Multiple Duplicate. It's going to say, how many copies do you want? Well, I just want one. I could make more, but I just want one. And then I can do things like create gaps or shift. I'm going to shift. I'm going to do a horizontal shift of, we're going to do 0.5. And I'm not sure if that needs to be 0.5 or -0.5 to get it to go to the left, but let's see what it does. I'm going to hit OK. And it did it to the right. So let me undo that. Let me select that. Let me redo that. Item, multiple duplicate. And this time I'm going to put -0.5. And that way get it to shift over to the other direction of the original. So now I have the two right there, and if I look at these different items here, at some point I'm going to have to tell Scribus which one of these is supposed to be on top of the other. So let me go ahead and get the pictures placed here first, and then I'll do the background one first, the one to the left. So I have that selected. You can see the red line around it. To get my picture in there, now what you do is you right click the frame, and I'm going to right click and get image. And so at that point it goes out and looks at the folder where I've saved my file. And those two different image files, the logo ping and the Rembrandt JPEG, are there because I've saved them there. So all I have to do is select it and hit OK. And it puts that picture in there. Now, the reason you're not seeing a picture of Rembrandt's face and all that stuff is because that picture is a massive, huge picture. If you were to print that out, it'd be, you know, a good, you know, 3 or 4 sheets of paper, big piece of, pictures, very large, and so we need to get that to squeeze down to where it actually fits into that box right there. So how do you do that? Well, you'll notice that one of the choices on the properties box over here is for image. If you go to image, you can scale it to frame, and then it shows up. Now, my problem when I scale it to the frame is that there's this big space between the bottom of the picture and the bottom of the page. And so I need to adjust this a little bit. So I'm going to use this what's called free scaling. So I'm going to click on free scaling, and then from that, with the Y scale and the X scale right here, you start to adjust these to make it start to fit in there a little better. So I clicked on Y scale twice, and I'm going to click on X scale twice, and that makes it fit into that box and look proportional and look a lot better than it did a moment ago. And I've got the whole space filled. So again, what I did is I basically, and I'll have to do it again in the next one, you right click the frame, you get the image, you select the image, and then you either scale it to the frame size that you have drawn, or use the free scaling and then adjust that so that it meets your needs. Now, I also want to put some image effects on this picture here. So I'm going to click on the image effects, and it brings up this box here. And as you look at the instructions, it will say, okay, as you have placed this on your page, you want to invert it, blur it, grayscale it, and work with its brightness. And so what you do is, again, invert, blur, grayscale, and brightness. So you look at this list here, and you select the things that you want to do to it on the left. You move those over to the right, and it gives you a preview of what it's going to look like. I inverted it, I'm going to blur it, and you can select how blurry it's going to get. I'll go with a 2. That's fine. I believe we wanted to work with a brightness. Move that over. You can start to make it, brighter, darker. More or less working with that brightness control there. And lastly, I believe we need to grayscale it. So I'm going to go to grayscale. Hit that in there. And so there's my effect, my edited version of that. I'm going to hit OK. Takes a second, and there's my edited version. Now it looks kind of creepy, but it's going to be in the background behind the original. So I'm going to go back to the other frame here, right click it, go to image, select that original version, and again it puts a big version in there, and mine is behind the edited one. So what I need to do is first get it up on top, and that's achieved through the XYZ portion of the properties here. And you'll see where it says level. You can bring things up, you can send things down, you can send it to the very bottom, you can bring it up to the very front. These are like the little layer buttons, or send forward, send forward, or send backwards that you're used to seeing in Microsoft Office. And so I'm going to bring this thing up to the front. So there's the original version of it up on top, and now I have to go back to image and basically go back to that free scaling. First I'm going to scale it to frame, and then go back to free scaling, and I believe it was like 2 clicks to make this look about like I liked it. So that's how you get the image and the edited image onto your page and placed like you would like to do so according to the instructions here. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and now what I'll do is I'll move to text, because now I'll show you how to get some text on the page, and with that you'll have all the information you need to get text in various colors and fonts, and work with images. Okay, let's get this text on there. If you're looking in the instruction manual, you're on page 15 for adding text. It's pretty straightforward. The formatting of text, I think, will blow your mind. but the insertion of the text is very easy. That's achieved by just going to insert a text frame, and then you draw on the page where you want to place that text, and then all you have to do is just double click it and type. And I'm going to zoom in here so you can actually see what I'm doing. Again, the navigation here is not nearly as friendly as what you're used to seeing in the Office applications, but you can see my cursor now, and I'm going to type the word Rembrandt. Actually, I'm going to do that in lowercase for the. So Rembrandt is typed on my screen in my text box there. Let me zoom back out again so you can see the text effects. Essentially, what they want you to do is see that there are some text effects which can start to capitalize things for you and so on. So let's get that over. That's good enough. Okay, so I need to get that text selected. So with that text selected, over here in the property box, I could give this a name. I'll call this the Rembrandt portion. That particular text box. And as far as the text goes, I'm going to go to the text part of the property box here, and then I can start to select various fonts and font sizes. And so I'll go with, I believe Gentium is the text we want for this one. That's one of the text, one of the fonts that we installed. So there's Gentium Basic and Gentium Book Basic. Which, if you're installing all those ones that I went with, I put on the Blackboard site for you. And see the size of it. Let's go with the font size. Let's go with like 75. Let's see how that's going to fit. We can make it even bigger. I'll go with even like 85. That's fine. We'll go with that for right now. As far as the effects go, they want you to see like the color and effects. If you click on this little box right here, you can then change the font color from its default black to any of those colors that you saw in the X11 color palette. And I don't remember what color it's supposed to be per the, so it's white. So it's sort of an antique white, I believe. Okay, choose white. So actually like straight up white for the text color, that's fine. So as you go in here, you scroll on down till you get to the W's, and there's white right there. So I'll make that text white. Also, they have these different effects that we can, like underlining, italicizing, subscript, superscript, and so on, like all caps, small caps, and I'm going to go with the all caps on it right there, and that gets it pretty close to what they're looking for from that tutorial. And so we could even get in here and actually work with a kerning, and the kerning is like the amount of space in between each of the letters. And so the amount of control you have on this is pretty impressive. And as you get into these other options down in here, that's where you can get into those items. So for example, I'm going to click on the advanced settings here, scrolling down here to show some more space, and they start to give you some visuals about what this looks like, how much space in between the letters, from the lines, between, and so on. So I'm going to just kind of start to push this out a little bit, but that's a really cool way to start to fill space. And so I've adjusted this kerning to about 5%. It's not necessarily described for you in the PDF tutorial, but I think you'll find a lot of utility for that. Like I love that ability to take a word and spread it out over a page, especially if it's like a flyer. And so that's how we got some text onto the page. We inserted a text frame, then we typed the text that we wanted, then we selected the text, then we went into the properties and adjusted its which font to use, which font size, which font color, and then did other things like all caps and adjusted the kerning of it. You do the same thing for the Van Ringen portion, which is right here underneath it. And I don't know if Van Ringen was his second name, like his last name, or maybe I'm not that familiar with Rembrandt or his work, but what I want you to see as you look at this instruction set, basically Van Rijn is behind Rembrandt, and so that's a layering issue. So let's go ahead and get that on the page. I'm going to go back to Scribus, and just to make this easy, I'm going to select that Rembrandt thing, and I'm just going to hit Control C and then Control V to copy it and then move it over. Because, and I'm going to move my page so I can actually see this a little better, get the property out of the way. But I want this to say Van Rijn as opposed to Rembrandt. The font and all that sort of stuff is going to pretty much kind of stay the same. I just have to change the color of it and change the words that are there. So I'm going to select the text, get in here, and go to Van Rijn. Select the rest of this guy and delete that. So Van Rijn is what I want. Make the size of this box a little smaller and move it over. And according to our tutorial, the I is sort of goes right in the middle in the lower third of D, so kind of give us a guide there. So I'll take I and move this over to about there. That looks pretty good. And so now what I need to do is change the color of it so I can see what's on top of the other. So I'll go back to text and go to the color here, and this one's sort of a gray. We'll go back down to those grays, like a gray 26, so you can see it. So you'll see that this Van Rijn is on top of the Rembrandt, and we need that to be the other way around. Again, how do you do that? Through the XYZ change in the property. So what we do is we go to this layering through the leveling, and we know Van Rijn is supposed to be behind Rembrandt, so we send it down a level so that Rembrandt's on top of that. So that's how you can modify. We could actually take Rembrandt and make that a smaller text box as well. Oh, I was a little bit too small. When you make it too small and it disappears, that's what it looks like. So so there you go. And you'll also see these boxes around the text that you see there. Those are not printing. If you want to get that to where that doesn't show up, all you have to do is go into the view and then uncheck the box for showing the frames. And those guys will disappear for you. If you want to see those boxes, you can show the frames. But don't let that freak you out. They're not going to print. So that's getting text on the page, that's getting pictures on the page. Let's do one last little block of text, and let's do specifically this one that talks about the Scribus Publishing, because I want to show you how to rotate things here. So let's get Scribus Publishing on the page. You do that by we're going to of course insert a text frame here. So let's insert a text frame. I'll draw it real quick here, and the text that we want in this is Scribus Publishing. And once that's on the page, we can select it. Let's go to the text portion of it. Let's make it yellow, so give it sort of yellow, which is down by the Y's. Let's make the font itself, that other one we had, the Bitstream one that we inserted, or we installed, right? So we'll go with the Bitstream Veris Serif. You can use that one, or maybe Sans Mono. I don't like that one so much. I'm gonna go with the Bitstream Van Sans here. That looks good. And now what I need to do, I'll make that a little bit larger. That looks pretty good. I need to basically rotate this text so that it's going perpendicular to the page, right? How do you achieve that? Well, again, you get that done through this XYZ coordinate part right here. You'll see that there's a rotation choice, and you can start to put, as you start to adjust this, it starts to rotate that box that you're looking at. So we basically want about a 90 degree turn on that. When we do that, change it, it moves our box, and then we can just we can just take that box and actually move it to a different, let me go back to the pointer tool, which is right here, select item, just put that on the page where I want it. So that's how you get a text box or anything rotated. You select what you want, and through the rotation interface part of the properties box, you make it, you rotate it, and you also select, which point, at which point do you do the rotation. You'll see that mine was rotating off of its corner. You get to control some of that through this base point. So now I think you have all the information you need to make this entire document. You have the step-by-step instructions from the PDF document here, as well as the instruction you've seen me provide you right here. Please contact me with questions. I'm going to ask you to do the same thing that I've showed you here. There's one last thing I want to show you, and that's this. Sometimes as we read in our textbook, a really effective design principle is one of contrast. And so I'll frequently ask you to basically put a colored rectangle on a page and then put text on top of that. And so part of that process is usually editing the opacity, so how opaque or how see-through a shape is. And so let me give you an example. I'm going to take this text box and just move it over here for a minute. I'm going to insert another rectangle here, put it on the page, and I want to put a fill color in there. Again, I've got fill colors and line colors, right? With the fill color, I'm going to give this a nice dark fill color. Go back to those grays. Get one of these guys. I'll go with like gray 13. It's nice and dark. And then I'll put the text on top of it. Put that right there, and I need to bring that up to the front. Okay, but this rectangle on the back, to adjust its opacity, to edit it how opaque it is, what you do, again with that item selected, if you go to the color portion, you'll see that there's this little adjustment bar for opacity, and you can start to make this go down. It starts to become somewhat see-through, and there we go. You can see that a little bit better. But as I start to make that more and more opaque, it starts to become almost translucent. And when I bring it back up towards 100%, it's that nice dark color. And so, in the first homework assignment, as an example, I give you, I ask you to create a couple of green rectangles on the page, and then make the opacity so X%. And what I'm talking about is that what I just showed you right there, because that I think allows you to create a basically a really nice background, and on which some text can contrast, and then that can look really pretty on a page. So there's your instruction. I hope this is going to be helpful for you. Please contact me with questions. I know this is kind of a lengthy lesson. This one was at almost 55 minutes. But you have to learn how to do it. So we'll just go up from here, because these are the basic things. So thank you for your time and attention, and have a great day. And I always forget something. Here's the last thing. I didn't show you how to render out PDF versions of this document. You save it, and you've seen me save it, I believe, through the file, and you have the save as and save commands here. If you're trying to save it to something different, use the save as. We're gonna, we've got the Jim Lindsay Flyer SLA right there. So we've saved it. Now what I want to do is make a PDF version of this, and that's done through the exporting process. And the way that works, I can go ahead and just close these properties to get that, so you don't have to look at it. But go to File and Export. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to save as PDF. And this is important. It's going to ask, it's going to say, hey, here's basically some things you might want to look at. When I do this into a PDF, there's some things here that might cause some problems. It's talking about basically our little opaque polygon down here might kind of when it goes to PDF, it may not look exactly like that. That's fine. I'm going to ignore the errors. And then when it gets to here, it says, where do you want to put the PDF version of this? I'm going to put it in the same exact place as the rest of my project. And that's what I want you guys doing too, because like, for example, in your first Scribus homework assignment, I want the SLA and PDF versions of it. I want both of those. If you just turn in the PDF file, I'm not going to grade it. I want the PDF and the SLA, so because if there's a problem with the PDF, I can go look at the SLA and I can figure out where you ran into an issue. So it's going to tell me where it's going to put that PDF version of this. As far as the compatibility goes, this is real important. Make sure you go back to PDF 1.3. When we are creating the PDF forms for this, this makes it to where we can actually fill this thing out. So just to get you into that habit, when it talks about compatibility, knock this back to PDF 1.3 or Acrobat 4. And then at that point, you just hit save. And it goes through its process. You get your slider bars. And then it's going to give you your PDF version. So let me go to the folder, check and see if it's done. There it is. There's the Jim Lindsay flyer. Open it up. It opens up in Adobe Acrobat Reader. There's a really pretty PDF document. And you can see why this is, this is nice. This is a nice looking document. And again, how'd you get that? Just that current tab is fine. From Scribus, go to File, Export, Save as PDF. Basically, look at the errors, and you can make changes if you want to. I'm going to encourage you just to ignore those right now. Make sure the compatibility is set to 1.3 and then hit save. And that's the process to create a PDF version of your Scribus documents. So sorry for the addendum here. Thanks again.